Thank you very much for joining us and welcome. This is what we do every weekday morning, 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. In the room with you every morning is Eric Latif, Ndu Oko, CT Muga. We have a guest for the next hour, John Ngumi. We'll be introducing him shortly. But first, let's hear today's proverb from CT.
A bridge is repaired only when someone falls into the water.
A bridge is repaired only when someone falls into the water.
Mm-hmm.
Before then, let them be.
Actually,
That's what happened with that precious talent school.
Mm-hmm. The wall collapsed.
Mm.
And what happened?
A crackdown.
I'm actually reminded of an earlier time when roads would be repaired because it was heard that the president was coming to that particular area.
Oh, yes, that too. Some time in the distant past.
Sometimes in the not too distant past, yes.
It happens even today.
Even today.
Oh, yes. Mkubwa anakuja.
Yeah.
Contractor, mobilize. You're on site and you do some work. And then there'll be somebody here who comes to explain, Your Excellency, so now the plan is within the next 2 weeks, we'll reach this corner. And then in the next 3 months, hopefully, Your Excellency will come to launch.
But when Your Excellency leaves, we go to sleep.
But there's a detail that is sometimes not mentioned. In those earlier times, there was nothing like the president moving from point A to B in a helicopter. Very rarely. But even the vehicle that the Excellencies travel in don't quite feel the road like the other vehicles that wananchi watukufu travel in. Believe me, the road feels very, very different if you are in a certain type of vehicle. Same road. Because there are some vehicles that are built specifically to absorb all that nonsense that the road has.
Right.
There are other vehicles that are built to amplify
everything that's happening on the road. So let's start with history. Today in history, on the 27th of July, 1973, President Mzee Jomo Kenyatta cut the tape to officially open Uchumi House on Aga Khan Walk. Right?
Yes.
Uchumi House is the headquarters of ICDC. He was accompanied by the then Executive Director, Eliud Matu ICDC Chairman then, Johnson Kiragori, and Minister for Commerce and Industry, Dr. Julius Gekonyo-Kiano, among others. On this day in 1973. And on this day in 2021, a man has come from Uchumi House to the Situation Room. John Ngumi, the chairman of ICDC. Welcome to the Situation Room.
Thank you. But I think I have to disabuse you. Until 2 weeks ago, Uchumi House was indeed the head office of ICDC. ICDC no longer owns Uchumi House, or in fact no longer owns anything at all. Every single thing has been transferred to a new company called Kenya Development Corporation, which brings together ICDC assets and also brings together two other companies which are going to be liquidated. One is called Industrial Development Bank Capital, IDB Capital, and the other one is Tourism Finance Corporation. So ICDC has ceased doing what ICDC used to do for the last 60 to 70 years.
It's a new entity now altogether.
There's another new entity altogether called Kenya Development Corporation.
So the ICDC that you are chair of is not an investment and all these things.
All those have gone.
So what?
Effective 1st of July, actually.
Okay. So what is ICDC then?
What ICDC is now going to focus on is doing what last year's Executive Order number 5 said. Coordinate, oversight, align those three entities, Kenya Pipeline, Kenya Ports, and Kenya Railways Corporation. So we no longer have the dual mandate of looking after what ICDC has been doing since 1954.
And who's going to be doing that now?
KDC, which will be a separate entity with its own board, own chair, and has taken over all the assets of ICDC.
And it will have no connection whatsoever with the current ICDC.
None whatsoever.
All right. So now, as you're looking at managing, the port, the railway, the pipeline,
Oversighting.
All right. Oversighting. So give us an insight into what that oversight then really looks at for these three.
Let's go back to why was this done? Why did the president push for these entities to work together? Go back to history. You may recall something called East African Railways and Harbours, which after the community broke up and several other developments, split into two entities, KPA and KRC. The reality is that a port like KPA operating in Kilindini and now in Lamu and elsewhere can't operate without people either bringing goods into the port for export or taking goods from the port inland. That is the reality.
Yeah.
How do you transport goods? Road, rail, pipeline. So what we've had is a mismatch in the sense that we've had these entities operating as independent entities doing their own thing without an alignment of strategic intent, where possible, a combining of operations to reduce costs, all those efficiency moves. In 2019, when Kenya Pipeline was looking to open up northern Kenya, which if you think of Kenya today, the economic corridor has run from traditionally from Mombasa, Nairobi, Kisumu, Eldoret. A new one is being created as we look with our eyes from Lamu, Isiolo, then either down to Nairobi or up to Ethiopia and Sudan and onto Uganda and parts west. Kenya Pipeline was going to cash in on that. The idea was to build a pipeline to Isiolo. At the same time, to Nanyuki. At the same time, Kenya Railways was looking to build a new railway from Nairobi to Nanyuki to replace the old one. Each of these projects was budgeted to cost between 20 and 25 billion. So that's 50 billion. I had this morning as I drove in, you were talking in billions and what a billion here could do.
Trillion.
Yeah, they're
Trillions,
everywhere,
actually.
trillions.
Yes.
Okay. So what the president asked me and others is, what does Kenya Pipeline actually want? It wants to get petroleum to Nanyuki. How it gets there, in the same way that a tanker will come to Eldoret and load petroleum at Eldoret to take to other parts, to Kitale and elsewhere. All Kenya Pipeline really required was somebody to collect fuel from Nanyuki Road here in the industrial area to Nanyuki.
Yeah.
Kenya Railways could do that. What did Kenya Railways lack? It lacked cash. What was really needed? Not a new rail, because it's really a freight line, was to repair that rail. So, to cut to the chase, instead of 50 billion, Kenya Pipeline spent 1.8 billion. Kenya Railways contributed other stuff in material. Kenya Defense Forces and NYS did the engineering and hard work, and it cost 3 billion.
So instead of the 25 billion,
No, instead of 50 billion.
50 billion. Well, but 50 was going to be pipe and rail.
Yes.
So forget the pipe.
No. Include the pipe, because, as I said, the pipe was merely a way for Kenya
It was just to
Pipeline
transport
to get their product to Nanyuki. Now,
Okay.
And the rail enables them to do precisely that.
in the long term, when Nanyuki and Isiolo and others open up, it may then become economical to open up. And indeed, there is a separate plan to build a product pipeline, maybe alongside the crude oil pipeline from Lamu to to Isiolo. But as we speak, we now have a proper system for delivering fuel to Nanyuki more efficiently and in bigger quantities. So much so that Kenya Railways is now in the process of bringing in another 3 locomotives to run that.
Just to service that
Yeah.
line.
So you're spending under 6 billion shillings,
Yeah.
whereby you would have spent 50 billion
We spent 3.
because of a critical oversight and coordination role. Is that what we are saying here?
Because of aligning the two, yes. That's what we're saying. And that's why South Africa has got Transnet, which runs railroad, port, and Germany and France. Those logistics, to be more accurate, you should be looking also at putting in airports.
Yeah.
It's all part of that logistics. And think about it. If you go back into history, there used to be a company called KNTC. It's still there. KNTC is the largest owner of warehouses in Kenya. You see all this ALS and what have you?
Yeah.
KNTC was there long ago. When I was a child, every town had a warehouse for rice or cement or beer or whatever. Bicycles, yeah, exactly. So what then is a next step? Remember, our food, the 40% of our food goes to waste because of storage.
Yep.
So in addition to what we're doing, working with the Ministry of Agriculture, we are going to, although KNTC is actually owned by the former ICDC now, KNTC, but that's another story. What we're going to do is to revive those warehouses, and suddenly we have an abundance of storage and hopefully an abundance of food. So these are big stories. It's a bigger story than seems apparent.
It's clear bringing together the bulk logistics companies, is a way to go. But then if you look at it from the political angle, and this is where you look at, okay, so Kenya Ports Authority is in business, it's bringing in a return. Kenya Railways has not been doing so well over some time. Now it has a new heavy investment called the SGR running from Nairobi to Naivasha. It requires billions of money to operate. Pipeline has been doing well. It had an investment of a new pipeline the other day. So many commented and said, this is a way to basically show up the Kenya Railways.
Wow.
Have 2 very well operating entities that are making money, and then there's one that's not making money, and it's really part of the flagship of the administration. So support it.
Let's first look at the facts. And there are 2 critical facts you need to understand about Kenya Railways. Railways, as a rule, don't make money. They are intermediate providers of an essential service to other things. Yes, you don't want them to lose money, but as a rule, they don't make money. Okay? So to expect Kenya Railways to be in the league of Kenya Pipeline or Kenya Ports is just unreal. It's got a lot of cash flow, but a lot of that cash flow will go into its operation. So yes, we do need to make Kenya Railways more efficient to make sure that it doesn't lose the money.
Okay.
Secondly, there is this huge misnomer about the SGR money, and I know this is what you're all driving at. The loan is a loan to the government, which then on-lends to China, to Kenya Railways. So it's not Kenya Railways. The loan is being serviced by the government.
It's by Kenyans, yes.
Because it is a government loan. Okay? So it's not as though Kenya Railways is seated out there waiting with bated breath to grab KPC or whatever cash. Number 3, and this is critical as well, there is no merger yet. We don't have a merger. Each company has remained precisely as it was before. Yes, its activities are coordinated, and we want to intensify that. But no one is reaching into Kenya Pipeline's accounts to grab cash to give to Kenya Railways. And by the way, government has always had that ability. There is something called the State Corporations Act, section clause 16.3. I know it very well, which empowers the Minister for Finance to take any cash he deems to be surplus to the requirements of that corporation and deploy it elsewhere. They haven't been doing that. Why should they start now? No. I think that there is no merger. That's the first thing, and everybody has been thinking that what will happen is that all the cash that's in KPA and KPC accounts will go off to no. You in the papers yesterday, you read that our reserves have gone down by X. I forget the number due to a repayment of a loan to China.
Yeah.
Did KPC or KPA contribute to that repayment? No, that was a National Treasury repayment. So where is this myth coming out that this company's cash is being used to help Kenya Railways?
Well, a lot of times information comes out to fill a vacuum, right? So it could be, John, that because we're not hearing what exactly the real situation is, people then decide to fill the gaps with information that they say, okay, this is what could make sense because we're not hearing it coming out. So maybe if we heard it, that this is actually what is going on, then people would not
But even
take
when-
that, have that temptation of, filling the vacuums that are there.
Which is why I'm here this morning.
Voila.
Yes, and you see, John, when it comes to matters related to the Treasury, the one thing that seems apparent is that the Treasury has become the home of, one, generating taxes on a daily basis through KRA for Kenyans to pay. Two, paying, always telling us about debts, some of which we didn't even know about and which we now need to pay, and they're huge, colossal amounts. So you cannot blame the naysayers for thinking that here's a situation where Pipeline makes money, KPA makes money, Kenya Railway, dubious. But you have a situation where two huge money-making enterprises suddenly comes under one umbrella. For people to add one and one and come to the conclusion, they could be completely wrong. But you can understand how it is.
But this is
Yes.
one, and that is one.
Yes.
Well, I hope I have dispelled that, but also I need also to say that this business of us not knowing about loans is also another myth. There is a huge book. It's about that thick.
Yeah.
That thick.
It's called Expenditure Estimates.
How many pages is that thing?
Thick.
Okay.
But if you, us, and those who inform Kenyans care to read it, every single loan is there. You may not know it. You may say it's not there, but there's actually and I will take the trouble to today when I'm back in the office. I'll forward you the page on loans, which goes back into great detail. How much is being paid? What is owed to whom? It's there. I think we've been a bit lazy in.
John,
actually-
you're an investment banker. You look at finance. That's what you've been doing for how many years?
Not only that,
This is your life.
It's people like John who are called upon when we were getting into some of these things. That's what advise and say, no, that particular path I wouldn't really advise you to take. This is the path you ought to take.
Yes.
Now, the moment something is like One Piece Part 1 and 2, so something like 2,000 pages. Who do you think is going to read it?
Page one.
Yes.
Oh, you
Make it even one page, my friend. But it's
John,
financial.
the point I'm making is it is good that that information is in the public domain, as you say, but the onus is on the government to be able to make this thing understandable. Synopsisize it. Say, folks, this is what
But
is
the onus,
happening.
I would have thought, is also on the media. After all, the word media is derived from intermediary, And you are meant to be the intermediaries to explain the complexities of the world to us poor folk.
You are absolutely right, John, and as you correctly put it, that's why you're here. and we've asked others.
That's
Yes.
why you say touche and we move to the next one.
Yes.
Hey. Okay, we were not prepared for that, but
Thank you.
it's a good one. Now, talking about the whole idea, and you've explained it very well, the whole idea of seeing how do we synergize this very important infrastructure arms of our sector. I'm coming back to how we started this. So the president with the executive order says, ICDC, this is the board, and your role shall be to coordinate.
Correct.
But ICDC since 1950, whatever you said.
Four. That's when it was set
Imagine.
up.
Yes, I know. I was just trying to show that it's a long time ago.
In the previous century.
Or before independence, right? In the war of I don't know what,
Yes.
has been doing something different, sort of different. Why not create a new entity and say this new entity shall then coordinate this particular infrastructure, and let ICDC go ahead and do what it's been doing and revamp ICDC?
Well,
Why go into ICDC and then now force ICDC to cede its work to KDC and the others?
I am stunned that the media could be encouraging us to create yet another parastatal. Anyway, again, please go back to 2013. In 2013, a committee co-chaired by Isaac Awondo and Ahmed
Abdulkadir.
Abdul Kadir.
Ahmed Nasir Mohammed.
No, Abdul Kadir.
Abdulkadir, yes.
Came up with recommendations on reforms of parastatals, commercial parastatals, how they should be governed and managed, which was really a combination of work that had been going on for the previous 2 decades. The broad conclusion is there are too many that are doing the same thing. They need to be managed more efficiently.
Yep.
One of the recommendations, which I supported very strongly for historical reasons, is that Kenya needed a proper development bank. If you go back to Kenya's history, late 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, the motors for financing virtually all the companies you see in Kenya, which grew up at that time, were ICDC, IDB, DFCK, KIE. We allowed them to atrophy. We forgot that development banks have a very different mindset. And ICDC in those days could come to your company, become a shareholder, go onto your board, give you both loan and equity, and lo and behold, your companies, a lot of the big companies we see here, household names came from that history. So we were left with a patchwork of development banks, and the idea was to have one development bank. The combination of ICDC, IDB, and tourism finance is not something that was invented last year. It was one. Read the report. It is not that thick. It is this thick. It is there. There was the idea of creating our development bank, although we couldn't call it Kenya Development Bank for legal reasons. It's now called Kenya Development Corporation. So using ICDC last year was a way station. It wasn't the end. Already the decision had been made to continue with that merger.
Okay.
So rather than creating two, let KDC take over, clean out ICDC of all these assets, and start afresh with ICDC now. Now, eventually, what really ought to happen, if our politics ever allows it, what we ought to have is one company, one holding company for these entities, plus airports and others. Maybe that'll happen in future, but that is what ought to happen.
Someday soon.
Someday, hopefully soon.
The conversation continues. This is the Situation Room with Eric Latif, CT Muga, Nduoko, and our guests this hour, John Ngumi, Chairman, ICDC. Before we continue, John, I want to take you back because You're somebody who has worked in the private sector for many years as an investment banker. And then you now got into public service and you are now working in the public sector. You went into Konza Technopolis, then you went to Kenya Pipeline as chairman. Now you're chairman ICDC. That move from private to public, when we see many making that move, it's either of two things. One, they're very patriotic and they see an opportunity where they can contribute, after successfully running in the private sector. Now they want to bring their expertise here. Or two, they have seen an opportunity where they can better secure their future. Or both.
Well, first of all, let's again stick to the facts. I did not move. I was co-opted. I was happily working away as an investment banker, and I was co-opted first as a non-exec chair of Konza, and then as chair of Kenya Pipeline, which, by the way, also meant that I had to leave my career. Now, of course, there was a choice of saying no. But then, what right do I have to moan about misgovernment of public sector corporations if, when I'm given an opportunity to try and change it, I don't? That would have been a complete negation of everything I had done or believed. So I took it up. I can tell you, and I've said this before to cries of disbelief, that anybody who genuinely wants to make money in the public sector without stealing, stay out. There is no such thing. There's lots and lots and lots and lots of work, and lots and lots and lots and lots of non-monetary pleasure in getting things done. But please, don't look for the billions. There's no comparison between what I was making as a banker and what I get paid to do what I do in the public service. So I was co-opted, but I did not object. And quite frankly, despite the, shall we say, a very colorful 6 years, I don't regret it.
You're still enjoying yourself.
Oh, yeah, why not?
You look back and you see what you've done, and you're like, okay, we have moved the needle.
We moved the needle considerably. I mean, KPC, I dare say, is now a very admired corporation.
Yeah.
It's made considerable contributions to the exchequer. Charles here will remember what we did last year on sanitizers and masks. And generally speaking, it is an exemplar of what can be done if you insist on governance and ignore all the incredible amounts of noise that Kenyans have a genius for generating.
So looking back at that point when you were one of the geniuses that were making a lot of noise on the misgovernance of our public sector and especially state corporations, look back. What ails the state corporations?
I don't think there's one ailment. I think there is a combination of things that have grown, just like moss and plants and what have you grow on a wall, and suddenly over 30 years you can't tell where the wall was or the color. There are certain things. There is a very understandable tension between boards and management. There is this confusing structure where you have ministries and inspectorates and many other bodies. But what KPC did teach us is that if a board is singularly minded as to what it wants to do, it will cut through all that. No one takes a panga and forces you to sign some deal or some contract which is detrimental to Kenya. So if a board seriously takes its job, if a board takes its role seriously, then it is possible to cut through a great deal of what comes across as lack of of governance. There's a very powerful word. It's called no.
So, John, do you think that? I think we've had this conversation very, very many times. Is it the individual who sits in a position, like here we're talking about oversight and coordination of certain things, which you have seen has yielded certain benefits. It has done some good, right? And hopefully to do more. So is it the individual who is driving this particular agenda then would be the one that will make the change, or is it everybody working together? What do you see?
Ideally, you want to institutionalize all these things. You do not want to depend on individuals to change things, and that's what we strove to do at Pipeline by pushing for openness, pushing people to say things as they are, and pushing for empowerment of particular officers in the company. But the reality again is that we still remain a pretty young country, and therefore the individuals at the top will make a difference in a way that they won't in a more mature, larger economy. The individuals who head corporations, who head state corporations in Kenya, do make a difference, and that's why, for instance, you've seen that we've as a country we've got more women now as board chairs, as board directors, and as board as chief executives. And what we've been doing, a group of us, is to bring these board chairs together, these lady board chairs together. We have regular sessions where we teach them what we have learned, the pitfalls, what you can do, what you can't do. It is astounding how many people in this who are brought into these positions, how much they do not know that they can do. And it's that gap is actually quite critical that it be filled. So individuals, I am afraid, in our situation matter a great deal. And guidance and mentoring of those individuals matter a great deal.
Then I'll take it up and I'll start from just the bottom, the corporation, the workers, then the management, then the oversight and advisory role that the board plays. And you say it's important, it's very, very important that we have people who occupy those offices at board level who really mean well. But then those are political appointees. The appointing authority of these boards is a politician or somebody who at least answers to a politician. Now, maybe that's where the problem begins. That not all our politicians or those who are occupying those political offices mean well.
I beg to differ. There is an unspoken assumption in your question that political appointees or people appointed by politicians are by definition going to be one way or the other inclined. The reality is the following. We've got a very large public sector, extremely large public. The politicians and policymakers will of necessity be involved in it. My experience is that by and large there's actually quite a lot of robust debate as to do we put Charles or do we put Latif. So it doesn't necessarily follow that the fact that a board is appointed by a CS means that that board is appointed purely and completely on the basis that they will do my yes, and it's not as simple as that. I know where this question is leading. It's what many people have been saying, that all these positions ought to be advertised and interviews and so on and so forth. And in principle, no one has any objection to that. But I think we need to get there rather than saying that open up. I don't know how many positions there are. There are 400 odd state corporations. So say 10. So 40,000 or whatever. Now, 4,000 actually. So maybe we will get there. But who says that an interview process cannot also be
manipulated?
Yes.
Sure. So you think that things need a jumpstart?
Things need this country needs a jumpstart in many places. Yes. And we will not jump to the ideal without a bit of pain here and there.
John, let me ask this question. What is envisioned as being medium term, short term, we've already spoken of medium term and long term goal of ICDC. What is it that you see as this picture of that will represent achievement when you get to it?
Okay. First of all, let me go back and answer a question you have not asked. Why is all this being done? Yes, there's a Presidential Reform Commission and Reform Committee and so on and so forth. Why is all this being done? It's to me glaringly obvious. Kenya is a very, very, very small country, globally speaking, but which has an incredible lack of location and people. What do I mean? The fastest growing region in the world, and I've said this many times, is becoming like a repeated.
It's Ngumiism.
You know, it's a mantra.
The fastest growing region in the world is the Indian Pacific Ocean region. Australia, Japan, China, Indonesia, India, the Gulf, what have you. That whole rim requires resources and requires markets. The one continent with resources and potential market is Africa. How do you get into Africa? Either to sell to Africa or to extract from Africa, or hopefully to manufacture in Africa. You get it. You get in through locations. Kenya has the ideal. Kilindini, Mombasa, is great. Lamu is fantastic. It is the deepest water anchorage on the east coast of Africa. If you've been to Lamu Port, it is a straight path, which means the largest ships in the world can dock there, which they can't in Kilindini or Dar or whatever. So if we can get that location story right, then you got the middle of Africa, what I call Middle Africa, where the bulk of Africa's population lives, from Kenya in the east to DRC in the west, and then up to Senegal. What we are trying to do is to make Kenya, is to cement Kenya as the entrance, as a key to exploiting, in the best possible use of the word, Africa. That would be success for me. That we actually do get that. We do get those roads running and rails and others. We will do a railway from Lamu. It is heavy infrastructure. It is not for its own sake, because I've been hearing this talk about we don't eat infrastructure. But without that infrastructure, you will not create the markets and the jobs for people to eat.
So we'll not eat. Without infrastructure, you won't eat. Even if you don't eat infrastructure. There's a question by Guido Jaka who's saying, a question to you, John. Is the SGR still viable now that it appears that the project, the SGR itself, construction, is stuck in Naivasha, and we're now going back to meter gauge railway crossing over into Uganda?
I think that you should give government credit for making adjustments midway. The dream is still the same one, to have an SGR all the way to Malaba and onward to Kampala. But, and again, I've been talking to the MD of Kenya Railways, and we must take you media to see this. You can do SGR to Naivasha. The two stop together. You offload onto an MGR and it goes. if you accept the principle that the big user of railway will be the freight, then it's not a complication. We've managed to, I think, what you call a workaround. The fact that the SGR has not yet reached Malaba, in that we are able to transfer goods from SGR to the MGR.
That isn't a problem. That isn't a problem. Even with the old railway, that was possible.
So what is the problem?
Cost. Anytime you talk about SGR, there's this demon of cost that is always hanging over its head.
On Sunday, I had a long chat with the people who built the SGR. And I asked that question. And there are things I was told which stunned me.
Stun us also with those things.
Have you looked at the SGR and seen that it's built on an embankment?
Yep.
Yes.
All the way.
All the way.
Yes.
Do you know what that does?
I would like to know why that.
Why that?
Yes.
It means that when we get to electrifying the SGR and giving it to the speeds it needs to go at, there are no animals, there are no individuals, there are no people. If you go to Ethiopia, which is mooted a lot by people about its costs, please read about it. Accidents, stoppages. We don't have. So that was a big part of the expense. Putting the rail up rather than, which makes
On
it
the level crossing.
rather than on the level crossing. Now, I know your mind is saying, yeah, but there was all these issues we are seeing, and the NLC land purchases.
That is precisely what my mind is saying. John is a clairvoyant in addition to being chairman of ICDC, yes? Everybody, and he's spot on. That is exactly where my mind is.
But let me ask you a question then. Does the fact that people did what they did negate the logic behind the SGR?
No.
To my mind, it doesn't.
No, it doesn't. I'm saying no. You see, let me explain the thinking. It is not that we do not understand the benefits of these infrastructure problems. It's not it. Even the cost of the SGR would not even be a heavy discussion if the economic woes of the citizenry were at the level that they were. Or there would be this constant discussion of shortfalls of projects that ought to be fundamentally at the doorstep of the government. Health, education, just basics. Now, but the key to all this is the absence of a clear explanation.
So what you're driving at really is that if we are going to do an SGR or a pipeline or whatever, let us subject them to rigorous
Public participation.
Yes.
Well,
yes.
Public participation is one of those phrases that get my hackles up, because what really tends to happen is that you gather 180, they make a bit of noise, and you go on and do
What do you want to do anyway?
And you have a register of 180 that attended.
What you really asking for is rigor in the analysis by those who should be doing the analysis, which is why some of us pushed very hard in 2015, but it was not taken up, that we create something called Office of Management and Budget, because as long as projects are originated by the users, the users will originate projects which benefit them.
And they'll own
and
it.
even this, John, I don't even think necessarily that the citizens I honestly don't think that people want to be belabored by this public participation. I think citizens want to trust. They really want to trust that the responsibility that has been put in the hands of a few is accounted. I think, and they can say, okay, you know what, John and his people are there, we are fine.
And that's why people don't make noise about Thika Road, which was also a pretty expensive project, or KSAC, which was an expensive project for its time.
See, John, if I were to give you a live example, for instance, if I look at the time when you were chairman of the pipeline, and I look at what the pipeline gave to the exchequer before your time, and the amount of money that they were now able to give. So, as a man who understands 1 + 1, I ask myself, so it means the pipeline was able to make this money before this man became chairman. So where was the money going? It's the perennial question we ask. Now,
That's a question of management.
Yes.
That's
So-
a question of a culture of how do you account and steward
Yes.
public resources.
precisely. Now, the other aspect of it is communicating these things clearly. It can be.
That.
It's never communicated. You're stonewalled. And the moment you stonewall, what you've done, you've opened a whole planet of fairy tales. People will come up with whatever explanation suits them to fit into that particular situation.
I think that people, even people in government, know that communication is
Are you saying they actually know that?
It's horrific. I'll close by showing you something which will surprise you, because it surprised me as well, because it shows what we have been doing, okay, as a country, and it shows you. Where's that map?
It's on page 5.
Do you understand what all these bypasses have been doing? Do you now, if you look at this map, this is it.
Well, I've appreciated the bypasses myself when I use them.
Yep.
I have appreciated them fully.
So now that takes out that entire center here.
Right.
It gives you the ability to go
Round.
to go round
a ring.
around Nairobi. Then the second thing that Kenya Railways is trying to do, which is the railway city, is going to sink all these rails in Nairobi and create another 493 acres of land in the CBD. And will link, because Nairobi's main traffic problem is that the marshalling yards have split Workshop Road, Enterprise Road from Haile Selassie.
Yes.
So if you do that, then suddenly Nairobi changes entirely.
Suddenly there's a lot of space available.
Yes.
But now, communication. See all those things?
Tell us. I think.
All
How many
those
people
things.
know what you've just... We see bypasses.
Yep.
Coming
Some
up.
of us use bypasses.
It's a nice drive.
But what you've explained is not difficult to understand.
Or even the railway city.
It really is.
We have
Not difficult to understand. Even those tall pillars on which you've built the railway. Animals being knocked and elephants jumping over the rail. Not difficult to understand. But it has to be told.
Indeed. John, thank you very much.
Sawa.
Asante sana. John Ngumi is chairman of ICDC. Thank you for coming. Come again so that we can now talk about a lot more that you're doing. Yeah. Railway cities, very many things.
There's a
you're
lot
doing.
that we need to talk about, and John,
Yes.
you need to come back again.
Sawa.